How you doing? Charlie Martini here. In another video, I talked about the flaws I found in the Bible, and I also discussed reincarnation. And I got some emails from people, genuine questions, because a lot of people do believe in reincarnation, and I told you that it doesn't exist. So they asked me, well, how do you know it doesn't exist, and how can you explain it? You said, in order to understand why reincarnation does not exist for us mortals in this universe age, you have to understand a couple things. First, you have to understand what the soul is, and then you have to understand the parts of us that actually survive death. And in order to do that, you have to understand. You have to go back all the way to the beginning, and I don't mean beginning of time. I mean the beginning of eternity. You have to understand about God and His prerogatives and what He has given to us. So, our finite minds have a very hard time grasping the concept of infinity. Our minds know beginnings and endings. We know we're born, we know we're gonna die. We cannot conceive of a being like God who never was born and never will die. We cannot understand something that never had a beginning and doesn't have an ending. It's just alien to our mind. We can't understand other beings that just eventuate. We do have a little bit of a grasp of a being, a celestial being that can transcend. We can almost understand that. But let's go back to the beginning of eternity. Now, even though on paradise time is meaningless, there is sequentiality. And let me give you the sequence of how, even though all these things happened at the same time, this is the sequentiality that our minds could understand. First, there was God the Father. He needed a material world to exist on, so He created paradise. Now, in order for God to break free from the fetters, let's say, or the bonds of eternity and infinity, He realized He needed to create two other co-creators. So next, He created God the Son and God the Spirit. After that, He created the 1 billion worlds called the Havana system, and this is the worlds of infinity. These 1 billion worlds encircle the divine isle, eternal isle of paradise where God resides. So what did God... Now, God being the perfect being, He's also the perfect delegator. And again, to break free from the bonds of being the creator, He needed His co-creators, as I said. So He did delegated all His power and all the authority that He deemed necessary to these other divine beings. Before I get into what God kept for Himself, let me just give you an idea of what these divine beings, what power He gave these divine beings. Now, we all heard that God is everywhere. Some people say, well, how can He be that? Well, let's think of the universe of time and space as a table. And on this table, you have a bucket of water at the far end. Now, the bucket represents paradise. The water inside the bucket represents the Spirit of God, the third person of the Trinity. So the Spirit is in charge of the circuitry of the universe. And how does that work? Well, let's just use the water for example. If you dump the water out of the bucket, it goes all over that table. And if you're standing on one end of the table in the water and somebody shocks this other end, you feel it. Well, that's how the circuitry of God the Spirit works. So God can be anywhere where that water is, where that Spirit circuitry is. So what did He give His Son? Now, I'm only telling you what relates to us mortals. I mean, He delegated a lot more authority to them. But relating to us mortals, what power does God the Son have? Well, If you're a person that say, God the Son has what they call paradise gravity. He naturally draws soul or people to paradise. If you just went through life haphazard, you didn't believe in God, you did not believe in God, you didn't know what was going on, the natural pull of the universal Son would bring you to God, or to paradise. So that's the the powers that he delegated them that are most important to us. So what did he decide to keep for himself? Well, he chose to put a piece of himself, we call it the Spirit of God, in our minds. And this is a fragment of him. And don't think of it as the Spirit being trapped in the mind or indwelling our regular mind. We know we have consciousness, we know we have subconsciousness, but what we don't really know about our superconscious mind. And this is where the Spirit of God dwells, does all its work in the superconscious section of our mind. So what that Spirit does is everything we feel and experience in life, all our joys, all our sorrows, all our successes, all our failures, all our loves, everything that Spirit feels and is a part of with us. And it is also a part of God. So God actually is with us through that Spirit. Now, let's think of, again, physically, God is the farthest celestial being or spiritual being away from us. Let's just say you have the central eternal Isle of Paradise where God lives, surrounded by the 1 billion worlds of Havana in infinity. And then outside of that, the 7 trillion worlds of inhabited worlds of time and space. And let's just say, for example, that we are way at the very end of the creation of time and space, and God is way in the middle on Paradise. So physically, he is the farthest spiritual being from us. But because of the Spirit that's within our minds, he is the closest spiritual being to us. So when you say the Spirit of God is within you, and if you could hear that Spirit's voice, if you could talk to that Spirit, it would be just like talking to God. So that was his first prerogative. He wanted to be with his mortal children and experience everything we experience. So what was his second prerogative that he gave us? Personality. If you think about it, no two people have the same personality. And I'm saying no two people who ever existed on the planet Earth has the same personality. No people existing today have the same personality. No people who ever will exist have the same personality. So this kind of gives you a little grasp of how infinite God is. And let's take it a step farther. In time and space, there's 7 trillion other worlds. And all the people on these 7 trillion worlds have a different personality. And that's all the people that ever lived on those worlds. All the people who are living today on those worlds. All the people who ever will live on those 7 trillion worlds. They all have different personalities. So you kind of have to wonder, how can God keep track of all? How could he be that infinite? Well, that's what infinity is all about. So now that we know what God gave to us, let's talk about the soul. What is the soul? The soul is, you always hear that the eyes are the window to the soul. Well, the soul is not within us. What happens is every time we learn something or we do something that's worthwhile and that we're going to need in the next world, because everything we do in this world is only preparation for what we're going to need to do in the next world. And our Spirit knows this. So what it does is it takes everything we learn that's worthwhile, everything we learn that we need in the next world, and it starts building this for us in the next world. And it's built, let's not on heaven, but let's just say heaven. It's a world that circles heaven. But let's, for simplicity's sake, just say this happens on heaven. So the more we learn, the more we do, that spirit is building and building and building our soul. And you say, well, how can you even tell you might have a soul? Well, one way is, did you ever do something that you really felt good about? You did something nice for somebody, you helped somebody, and you got that feeling inside you that was like so joyful. I mean, or maybe you saw something on TV, you almost start getting tears of joy. Well, that's the spirit, that's the soul. We are tethered to our soul, even though it's up on heaven and it's a work in progress. We are tethered to that soul. So you can also think, well, I shouldn't even go there. Let's stop that, and let's just say we've got the building blocks there. So what the soul is going to be is our vehicle in the next life. And what happens is, when we die, our mortal mind will occupy that vehicle, and our divine mind of the spirit will also occupy that vehicle with us. And at one point on heaven, we will fuse with our spirit. Our mortal mind will fuse with the divine mind. And this is a universal secret that a lot of celestial beings can't understand. They cannot understand how a lowly mortal animalistic mind can fuse with the divine spiritual mind of God and create an immortal soul that goes all the way to paradise. That they cannot conceive that, just like we can't conceive paradise. So that's our soul, our vehicle in the next life. Now, because our personality is part of that soul, just like you read in the Bible, it says, in the next world you will know and you will be known. So I don't know if you've ever haven't seen somebody in 20 or 30 years and then you see them again. Well, they changed physically, of course, but as soon as you start talking to them, they're the same. They're the same person. They've got that same personality. You immediately flash back and you say, "Oh yeah, that's Charlie. That's Joe. That's just," and you can relate to that same person you knew 20 or 30 years ago. Well, it's going to be the same in heaven. We're going to have our soul as our spiritual vehicle, which is going to look radically different than we do now, but because we will have our same personality in our mind, we're going to know another soul that we encounter that we knew in this life. We're going to know them and they're going to know us. So now that we know about the soul and basically and again, it's a crash course, there's a lot more to know, but this is the basics. What parts survive death? Well, the Spirit of God survives, the soul, of course, survives, and since God bestowed personality upon us, our personality and mind matrix that makes us us also survives. So where do these things go after we die? I mean, this is where people might say, hey, you got spirits, evil spirits, you got ghosts, you got this, you got... Well, no. Our divine spirit from God, as soon as we die, goes directly to paradise and communes with the Father. It lets know all our survival capacity, everything we learned, everything that we did. So that spirit goes to paradise. Now, our soul is kept on heaven, and again, it's not actually on heaven, but we're going to call it heaven just to say, our soul is kept by our guardian angels. Our personality and our mind matrices are held by the archangels. Now, when it comes time for us to be resurrected, and I don't know how the process works, but we all know, those of us that believe in the next life, that we will be resurrected. And what happens when we're resurrected is our mind matrix and personality that's been held by the archangels and the divine spirit that was on paradise comes back into our soul, which was held by the guardian angels, and we are resurrected into a new being. We have a mortal mind and a divine mind. And actually what the soul is, because we will fuse with that divine mind, our mortal mind will fuse, and actually what our soul is our child between our mortal self and our divine self. And again, I said it's a mystery. Other celestial beings can't fathom this. So they're the three things that survive, and that's why you don't have evil spirits or reincarnation, because all this happens off the earth. Once we die, our body turns to dust, and that's it. Everything else happens off the earth. So there is no reincarnation. We're not going to come back as a cow or something else in another life. That doesn't happen. Like I said, we move on, and everything happens up there. And why would you even want to come back? Like, once you see heaven, why would you want to come back to earth? I mean, you realize once you're there that you have other things that are more important to do. So I'm hoping that I was able to real fast clear up some of the mysteries between the soul and what survives death. Now, there's one other thing I just want to point out real fast. We have a problem on earth, because you can meet a beautiful person. I mean, you can see a beautiful woman, or if you're a woman, you can meet a beautiful guy, and you might think they're so beautiful, but then when you get to know them, you start to realize, they're really ugly on the inside. And the converse is true too. Sometimes you'll see a person that's not attractive, yet they're a beautiful person on the inside. Well, this doesn't happen in the next life. When our soul is resurrected, our outward spiritual appearance directly reflects how good we are inside. The more good we are inside, the more beautiful we are outside. So that's a problem we have here on earth, and a lot of us do worship beauty here on earth, and that's something that we really shouldn't do. We should really worship the person, the real person, the person that's inside. So I know this is real fast, and I know there's a lot more. I could tell you there's probably a lot more I missed that I didn't tell you, but I wanted to get it out. Just like I said, a lot of people did write to me and were asking things, and you can always write to me at charliemartini6969@gmail.com, and I'll try to get back to you or answer your questions, or even do another video to answer some of your questions. So I hope that explains some of the things I said in my other video, and I'm just going to say, Charlie Martini is signing off. Have a great day, and cheers.